Welcome to Mega District 4.
Sentient is a storytelling platform.
It's a story of hope, a story of change.
A story that's going to evolve over time and start to reflect the world that's around us.
We felt that with the convergence of immersive technologies and artificial intelligence, that there was an opportunity for us to begin to look at telling stories in entirely new ways.
Really, our goals is to encapsulate a moment, this transformative moment where we have this over-reliance on technology and we start to understand its real, true meaning to us over time.
So in telling this story, we felt that we could do it in multiple ways. If you were watching a film, maybe you could watch that in a traditionally 2D format, but we could then begin to look at what would that feel like if you could use your browser, your smartphone.
Augmented reality would become an interactive installation.
It could be a book, it could be a comic, it could be just a standalone piece of art.
And look at all of these different mediums to begin to tell the story through all of those formats as well.
So our story takes place in Mega District 4, which is a huge spiraling kind of mega city. It's built as a kind of oasis from the kind of bleak environment that the world has turned into. Obviously, there's lots of environmental change.
The environment has gone downhill very rapidly. There's lots of, the water levels have risen.
It's set a few decades from now, quite a few decades from now, in a world where society is run by two large corporations.
It's set in the future, but we wanted it to have a future that felt somewhat connected to where we are, feel kind of believable.
The Gateway Corporation runs a completely online virtual world where people can escape from the kind of trappings of everyday life, experience whatever it is that they want to experience, but their own personalized metaverse, and live out the life that they want to live in a planet that's not been left in the best state. And then you've got the citizen group who manage society, who kind of manage the security, the water, everything else, all the essentials, and just make sure that everyone stays in line and does what they're supposed to do. But there is some sort of difference within society as well. You've got the people who've opted in and kind of are happy to give all their data to these large corporations, and then you've got all the people who haven't done that, either because they didn't want to or because they couldn't afford to, and they're living kind of on the outskirts of the mega district. But amongst all of that, you've also got robots, you've got droids who are a large part of society and have been for several decades now, and they perform all of the menial tasks, all of the dangerous tasks, all of the repetitive tasks, so that humans who are plugged into the city don't need to do that anymore.
So in our story, we're starting in the dystopian position. And then as the robots become awake, rather than it becoming a kind of an uprising or an aggression, it becomes about expression.
So the awakening that we have, that moment where the robots become sentient, everything in society just comes to a halt. You know, everyone's everyday life stops and has to start again and has to kind of reframe itself around this moment. And then post that, the question arises, who is in charge? Because you've got, you know, all the people who are no longer plugged in to this kind of personalized metaverse, and then you've got all of these robots who have just gained sentience.
One of the first things that we did kind of very early on in the whole process was to try and write a kind of history of the world, and for our key locations, trying to give them an in-depth backstory and a timeline that led up to the points that we're seeing in the film, so that everything has a kind of a more believable detail. So we were looking at things like the emergence of like floating farm technologies and utilizing like water surfaces to create these farming environments where dry land would be gone. And similarly, other elements of inspiration like storm drains under Tokyo, which are these kind of incredible environments which feel very otherworldly, kind of impressive spaces that become important for a world where nature is kind of fighting back. The expanse of the city has been limited by encroaching sea levels, so the city becomes very vertical. And the idea was that at the lower levels, it would be very dark, not much sunlight would penetrate, and things would get lighter and brighter and more affluent as you moved up through the different heights of the city. And in the center of this whole thing was the Gateway Corp Tower. So a lot of our shots, they will have this central tower, which becomes the hub of the story, but also of our environment. Everything kind of builds towards this very kind of tall, imposing central column.
We had like the idea of this big sort of cityscape, and so that needs to be populated with the appropriate droids.
all the robots that we have around the world, we envisaged different roles that they might take and different jobs that they might have.
They were there for a purpose.
And that led into the way that they were designed and the visual aesthetics that they have.
I always start with drawing and figuring out a silhouette. Once we have like this rudimentary sort of rig and model sort of working, I tend to sort of go heavily into sort of more of the details. So I can then take it into software like Substance Painter to then add materials and textures. You know, the humanoid droid would be working mostly like in the home or in an office space, sort of very much forward sort of facing, so more human-like, made out of more warmer, softer materials, more plastics and synthetic, something that wouldn't disrupt the interior of a building. In contrast to, say, like the street droid, which is designed purely on sort of functionality, so a lot of like the mechanics of it, the joints and everything are very much exposed and hard metals and worn.
Some of these are, before the Awakening, are kind of police or more military droids.
The profile of that is a lot more imposing, a lot more aggressive, metal paneling for protection, stuff like that.
And then that becomes a kind of visual counterpoint for what happens after the Awakening. So then as they start to find themselves and start to see the world around them for the first time, we introduce color. We first see it on the robots' visors as they come alive, and then as they begin to appreciate the world around them, that same world becomes vibrant and visually exciting for the audience as well. So it's a real shift. One of the things that we kind of thought about was that these droids are all factory made and they're all the same. They don't have individuality in terms of their physical state. So we thought that the way that they would start to do that would be through fashion, customizing their bodies or things that they could wear.
It's all kind of peacocking, I suppose, because like droids don't need clothing. It's all kind of like a headdress to a certain extent. It doesn't really have like a real sort of purpose.
This moment that we've picked for this story is that inflection point, it's that change where the robots go from being kind of functioning members of society, performing the roles that they were defined to perform, and becoming beings in their own right and having their own choices to make.
Designing the clothes is a way to kind of like sculpt that personality.
Fashion is important because fashion is a reflection of society. And I think the way in which we experience fashion through these technologies is evolving.
But then we also started to think about other ways that other art forms that they might want to use or other ways to express themselves. So there's a scene that we have set in the kind of storm drains under the city where we have some maintenance droids that are performing tasks down there, and they stop what they're doing and use their tools to create these abstract sculptures, which was kind of the idea was that this would be a reference to like early cave paintings. We used Unreal Engine for the whole duration of this project. A kind of a massive benefit of this process is the speed at which we can iterate and make changes and experiment visually.
Before using Unreal, you will have to, render things and, commit to certain camera angles. But in Unreal, you have absolute control of all of that.
We're not locked into anything early on, and we don't have to make final decisions at the beginning of the process. We can really see what's working as we start to get the animations in, and we can see what's going to work well, and be very dynamic with our storytelling capabilities.
We had a wide range of characters and droids. When we got all that data into Unreal, it was quite fast to work on different layouts, have multiple characters in different scenes. Something that, not using Unreal, it could be a quite heavy workflow, but, it's actually quite unbelievable how fast it is to bring all this data into one place and be able to visualize it and no time wasted.
We're seeing this rise of AI, which I think, is alarming and scary for a lot of people, and we don't quite know how that's going to go, but we wanted to create a story that left open the potential for this to be potentially an exciting and positive thing, and it could actually bring whole new forms of expression and creativity that we haven't even seen before. We did use a lot of AI models to help generate mood board imagery and concepts around some of the locations within the film. We started that process quite early on when a lot of these tools were first coming out, and it was exciting to see how machines imagined themselves. And we were asking it some fairly kind of philosophical questions about what their internal process would be visually. It helped inform a lot of the early concepting around the film.
We had to tell a story that was both evocative, interesting, exciting, and then layer all of those elements of fashion, the creative industries, and of course technology as well. All of those things together, I feel like the industry has talked about for a long time, but has never really delivered. I wanted us to be the first people to do that.
Anything, any way that you want to engage with it, anything that resonates with you as a person, anything that's your form of expression is what Sentient can be.
Partnerships are really important to the future of Sentient because we're basically inviting brands to come in and be a part of this story. There's so many different mediums and channels that brands can tap into to allow them to engage with different audiences and have them to be a part of this long-term story.
Growing up as a kid, watching all these sci-fi films, be able to create one on your own is back to childhood in a way. Play with toys.